Right now, the Independent Electoral Commission has deemed the last round of by-elections a success, despite that only 28% of eligible voters casting their ballots. Do South Africans understand the relevance and importance of municipal by-elections? Joining me now to unpack this and other issues is elections analyst Wayne Sussman. Wayne, good evening, and thank you very much for your time tonight on the Newsfeed Late Night.
Good evening. It's great to be on your show.
Now, it is, as I mentioned, the last by-elections for 2020. They're catching up with a backlog that was brought on by the pandemic, but also very important in the sense that they are a preparation of what voting will be like next year during the local government elections in a time of a pandemic. Let's just first talk about that and the system and how it operated and whether it was optimal.
It was largely optimal. Look, obviously turnout was down. Turnout will be higher in the local government elections next year. Of all the by-elections held yesterday, there were only major issues at one of the by-elections in the Nkomazi municipality, which borders Swaziland and Mozambique, so a pretty rural part of Mpumalanga. Other than that, the elections, from all the reports I've read and the accounts I've heard, were free, fair, and relatively safe.
Yeah. Now, the 28% voter turnout, for example, on this particular one that happened yesterday, out of the 171,000 people that were supposed to show up, does that in any way, and maybe that's not the right word, but does it in any way impact on the credibility of the actual results? Because I'm sure they're credible, but do they really give confidence to the parties themselves that this is really the feeling on the ground? Is it, maybe let's say, is it a proper gauge of the temperature on the ground on how people are feeling about those parties?
We saw this in the 2019 national and provincial elections. Turnout was the lowest ever in a national and provincial elections. It obviously wasn't 28%, but I think that was one of my takeaways from the elections last year, that we are seeing more and more voters questioning whether their vote matters, whether their vote counts, whether their vote makes a difference. So it is concerning. With regards to 28%, I think we have to differentiate. There was a by-election in the Greenpoint area of Cape Town where turnout was a pitiful 11%. That ward is a pretty safe DA ward. And then, however, that in Groblershoop in the Northern Cape, turnout was above 60%. So I think with rural areas where there might be less alternatives, less things to distract you or less things to occupy your time potentially, you'll go out and vote. There might not be as much to do as there is in Greenpoint in Cape Town. Yeah. So typically in rural areas, you are going to see turnout be relatively higher. Even, by the way, if it's the safest of ANC seats in the rural Eastern Cape. However, with metros, we know that typically turnout in by-elections is below 28%, slightly above 20%. I get very concerned when we go below that 20% mark. That really tells me I think there were two by-elections yesterday, one in Greenpoint in Cape Town and one of the by-elections in Bushbuck Ridge, that voters are feeling that they can sit these by-elections out. And often our votes can make a major difference. Yeah. Your vote in a by-election could be some of the by-elections we had yesterday were very, very close. And those votes could have certainly made a difference. There was a by-election Oudtshoorn, and I think the margin was less than 20 votes. So your vote can certainly make a difference. It can mean that you can choose a new representative. It can mean that you can potentially choose a new mayor. Yeah. If the council was to lose if the governing party was to lose its outright majority. So it is very concerning that downward trend with turnout continues.
Let's look deep into those and use the last or so 5 minutes we have left so that we can just get to the nitty-gritty of this stuff. 70 wards were available, 95 being contested, while the DA lost 9 of these. This is in spite of the ongoing public battles within the ANC, that the opposition still lost wards, didn't manage to hold on to those wards. Does this say anything about the fact that people are loving the ANC more? Because certainly that's what the ANC is saying. ANC is saying, well, people are showing that they still have confidence in the party through these by-elections.
Yeah, so there were actually 24 by-elections last night. The ANC picked up 5 wards. 3 of them they picked up in Bushbuck region in Mpumalanga. That has traditionally been a very safe ANC area, but over the last few years we've seen the emergence of the Bushbuck Ridge Residents Association, which has totally collapsed. They didn't even contest these wards, which they controlled after 2016. So the ANC had big victories there, and it'll really continue to reinforce this idea that the ANC is so strong in rural areas of South Africa, particularly in Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and the Northwest. Then the ANC beat the DA in 2 wards in Oudtshoorn and in the Western Cape. The ANC actually struggled in the last round of by-elections in the Western Cape. So that's a major morale booster. I expected them to win the 1 ward in a village called Duiseldorp, but the other ward was a real upset. They took a pretty... Of all the wards available in Oudtshoorn, that was the hardest to win, and they won that ward. However, the ANC did lose a very safe seat in the Zwelihle township next to Hermanus in the Overstrand municipality. So the ANC had a net gain of 4. They gained 5 wards but lost 1. But if you look in places like Limpopo, the Northwest, in Mpumalanga, the ANC had a very strong, and the Free State, by the way, the ANC had a very good night last night. If I look at a place like Mangaung, in Bloemfontein, Mangaung, the ANC has its service delivery challenges, its governance challenges there.
Yeah.
But we've now had 3 by-elections in a short space of time in Mangaung, where the ANC has gone head-to-head against the EFF, and they've won by a handsome majority each time. So if you look at more rural provinces, the ANC are winning by large margins there and continue to be the party of choice for many voters in those areas.
Let's talk about that particular one in Hermanus, in Zwelihle, where, I mean, it's a fairly new party. The party is called LAND. It got 56% of those votes. If a party that is relatively unknown could be able to garner the votes in the way that it did, what does that tell us about that particular candidate and what the caliber of the voter in that particular ward?
So last night, we saw parties like the Forum for Service Delivery, a traditional Northwest party, not contest by-elections, the Better Residents Association, which is formerly the Bushbuck Ridge Residents Association, not attend by-elections. So those are examples of regional parties who were forced a few years ago, but are now almost non-existent. When one looks at the LAND Party in Zwelihle, this is a party which stands for something. They want their manifesto and their policy platform is very clear. Voters in Zwelihle know what they stand for. Voters in Zwelihle are saying that the ANC, the EFF, and the DA cannot represent us. They cannot get us additional land. We cannot continue to live where we're currently living, and we need more space. We need better housing, etc. So a party with a clear vision, a clear mandate, which might be confined to a local area, a regional area, which stands for something, I think can do well in by-elections going forward and the local government elections. And where the flip side is parties like the Better Residents Association and the Forum for Service Delivery, which are a response to the ANC in the Northwest or a response to the ANC in Bushbuck Ridge, have kind of lost their currency. So if you're a local party like LAND, which had a very big win against the ANC last night in a traditional ANC stronghold, if you stand for something, if your policy platform's clear, you have the potential to do well.
The EFF itself, I mean, how did it perform in these particular by-election? And for example, in Mpumalanga, where it was expected, I suppose, that they would have made somewhat of a showing there, did they show an increase in terms of the number of people that voted for them?
Yeah. So if one has to compare what the Freedom Front has done to the DA in the Northwest, where they have on 4 occasions now won by-elections off the DA, When one looks at the EFF, they've won only 2 by-elections in their history, one in Polokwane and one in the northwest, in Ditsobotla and Kolini. So the expectation game for the EFF will continue. They need to show their supporters that they are the government in alternative, the alternative government in waiting. We haven't seen them reach that point yet. And they also contest every by-election. And if I was to advise them, and I don't think they'll always listen to me, I wouldn't contest every by-election, because in some of the wards they did very poorly last night. However, the EFF did well in one of the wards in Bushbuck Ridge, winning over 30% of the vote. In one of the voting districts in the key Ekurhuleni by-election last night, in the area of Ramaphosa, you saw the EFF get over 30% there. That's very encouraging for them in going to the Ekurhuleni elections next year. And strangely enough, the area where they did the best last night was in Thembelihle. They sometimes struggle in the Northern Cape, the EFF, and in this area of Hopetown on the N12 National Road, they went from, I think it was 10% to 34% of the vote, or 35% of the vote. So a major increase. And that will continue to boost their morale. But the EFF needs to see more 30%, 40%, and ultimately taking awards from the ANC, taking awards from other parties, rather than, I would say, contesting every election where they're going to do poorly in some of those.
Election analyst at the Daily Maverick, Wayne Sussman, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us tonight on the